Passengers are already being denied boarding in 2026 for breaking new cruise rules, and most people don't even know they exist. Some of these rules are so strict now, your luggage can get flagged before you even step on the ship. And number 6? That one is catching people completely off guard at the port. Cruise lines have quietly updated their policies for 2026, and if you're not aware of them, you could lose money, waste your vacation, or worse, not even make it on board. So before we get into it, make sure you subscribe because these updates can literally make or break your trip, and you don't want to miss what's coming next. We're starting with the rules most people overlook, and working our way up to the ones that are already ruining cruises for passengers this year. Let's get into the 10 rules. 10. The too late to board rule. Stricter arrival cutoffs. This is one of the easiest ways to miss your entire cruise. Imagine arriving at the port just 20 minutes later than your scheduled boarding time, thinking it's not a big deal. After all, the ship is still there, people are still boarding, and in the past, cruise lines were a little flexible, right? Not anymore. In 2026, cruise lines are enforcing arrival windows much more strictly. Your boarding time isn't just a suggestion, it's part of a tightly controlled system designed to manage thousands of passengers efficiently. And once that window starts closing, staff are far less likely to make exceptions. What most people think is, as long as I get there before departure, I'll be fine. But that's where the mistake happens. Boarding doesn't happen right up until the ship leaves. There are final security checks, documentation verifications, and mandatory cutoffs that happen well before departure time. Miss that cutoff, and you're not just delayed, you're denied boarding completely. No refund, no reschedule, just a very expensive lesson learned at the port. And it's happening more often than people realize. Traffic delays, flight issues, even underestimating how long check-in takes can all put you on the wrong side of that deadline. The smarter move? Always aim to arrive at least 2 to 3 hours before your assigned time. Build in buffer time for delays you can't control, because once that boarding window closes, there's no catching up to the ship. But as strict as arrival times are getting, that's nothing compared to what's happening with luggage screening. 9. Luggage scans are catching more items than ever. Cruise lines aren't just getting stricter about when you arrive, they're getting a lot more serious about what you bring with you. Behind the scenes, luggage screening has become far more advanced in 2026. Every bag goes through detailed scanning, and items that used to slip through unnoticed are now being flagged instantly. What people think is, if it fit in my suitcase before, it should be fine now. But that assumption is exactly what's getting passengers into trouble. Today, even small or seemingly harmless items can trigger a hold. When that happens, your bag doesn't make it to your cabin. Instead, it gets pulled aside for inspection, and that can take hours. Some passengers board the ship, head to their room, and realize their luggage isn't there. Hours go by, sometimes even until late evening, before it finally shows up. And in some cases, certain items are removed entirely and only returned at the end of the cruise. That means no access to your clothes, essentials, or anything you packed for the first part of your trip. Not exactly the relaxing start most people imagine. The reality is, cruise lines are prioritizing safety more than ever, and their systems are catching more than ever before. So what's the smarter move? Pack carefully. Double-check prohibited item lists, and don't assume something is allowed just because it was on your last cruise. Because this time, there's a much higher chance it gets flagged. And if you think it's only obvious items getting attention, the next rule proves that's not the case. 8. The harmless item ban is expanding. Here's where things start to catch people completely off guard. There's a growing list of items that passengers assume are perfectly fine to bring, but are now being restricted or outright banned. And the problem is, most of them don't seem dangerous at all. What people think is, if it's a normal everyday item, it should be allowed. But in 2026, that logic doesn't always hold up. Cruise lines are expanding their banned items lists, focusing on anything that could pose even a small safety risk, especially items related to heat, electricity, or potential fire hazards. And this is where people get caught. Because these aren't unusual or suspicious items. They're things people pack all the time without thinking twice. So when those items get flagged during screening, it comes as a surprise. Suddenly, you're being told something you've brought on multiple cruises before is no longer allowed. And yes, people still pack these thinking they're allowed. The result? Confiscation, delays, and sometimes even warnings added to your account. Not exactly how anyone wants to start their trip. The smarter move is simple. Don't rely on past experience. Cruise policies are evolving, and what was acceptable before might not be now. Always check the latest guidelines before you pack. Because as rules tighten, it's no longer about what seems harmless. It's about what the cruise line considers a risk. 7. Balcony rules are being enforced aggressively. This one is catching people during sail away. For a lot of passengers, stepping out onto the balcony is one of the best parts of the cruise. Fresh air, ocean views, and that moment when the ship pulls away from port, it feels like the vacation has officially started. But in 2026, balcony rules are being enforced much more aggressively, and a lot of people don't realize it until they're already on board. What people think is, it's my private space, I can use it how I want. But that's not how cruise lines see it. Balconies are still part of the ship, and they come with strict safety regulations. One of the biggest issues is hanging items over the railing, things like towels, clothes, or decorations. It might seem harmless, but cruise lines now treat it as a safety hazard. Items can fall, create risks for people below, or interfere with ship operations. Then there's smoking. Many ships already had restrictions, but enforcement is now much tighter. Smoking in non-designated balcony areas can lead to immediate warnings, fines, or even more serious consequences. And here's what's changed the most: surveillance. Ships are monitoring these areas more closely than before. That means violations are easier to spot and much harder to ignore. So something that used to get a casual warning can now escalate quickly. The smarter move? Treat your balcony like a monitored public space, not a private one. Follow the rules exactly, even if they feel overly strict. Because the consequences now hit faster and harder than most people expect. Quick question: would you still bring something if you knew it could get confiscated with zero warning? Because what's happening next is even stricter. 6. New documentation checks are denying boarding. This one is stopping people before they even step on the ship. You can plan everything perfectly, pack the right clothes, arrive on time, follow all the rules, and still get denied boarding for one simple reason: your documents. In 2026, cruise lines are being far more precise when it comes to documentation checks. And what used to be minor issues are now turning into major problems. What people think is, as long as I have my passport or ID, I'm good. But the reality is, it's not just about having the document, it's about having the exact right version, in the correct condition, and matching every requirement for your itinerary. Small errors are where things fall apart. A name that doesn't perfectly match your booking, an expiration date that's closer than required, missing additional documents for certain destinations. These might seem like small details, but at the port, they can stop everything. And the worst part? These issues are often only discovered during final check-in. At that point, there's no time to fix anything. Passengers are being turned away for things they assumed wouldn't matter. And once you're denied boarding, there's usually no refund and no second chance. The smarter move is simple but critical. Double-check everything. Then check it again. Make sure your documents meet every requirement, not just the obvious ones. Because in 2026, it's not the big mistakes that catch people. It's the small ones. 5. Muster drill compliance is no longer optional. This is one of those rules people still underestimate, until it starts affecting their entire cruise experience. The muster drill, the mandatory safety briefing at the start of your trip, has always been required, but in the past, enforcement could feel relaxed. Some people delayed it, skipped it, or assumed they could deal with it later. That's no longer the case. What people think is, I'll just do it when I have time. But in 2026, cruise lines are making sure you don't have that option. Now, if you don't complete your muster drill on time, your access to the ship can be restricted. That means certain areas, activities, and even services may be blocked until you've complied. So while everyone else is exploring the ship, enjoying restaurants, or heading to events, you could be stuck trying to sort out something that takes just a few minutes to complete. And it doesn't stop there. Repeated delays or refusal to comply can escalate the situation further, because from the cruise line's perspective, this is about safety, not convenience. People think they can skip it, until they realize they can't do anything on board. The smarter move? Get it done immediately. As soon as you board, make it your first priority. That way, you avoid restrictions and start your cruise without unnecessary interruptions. 4. Drink package monitoring is getting strict. What used to be common is now getting people flagged. Drink packages have always been one of the most popular add-ons on a cruise. Unlimited beverages, no need to think about prices. It sounds simple and convenient. And for a long time, people treated it that way. But in 2026, cruise lines are paying much closer attention to how these packages are used. What people think is, I paid for it, so I can use it however I want. But that's not entirely true. Most drink packages are designed for individual use, and sharing, even casually, is now being monitored more closely than ever. Something as simple as ordering drinks back-to-back and handing one to someone else might seem harmless. But from the cruise line's perspective, that's a violation of the terms. And this is where things start to change. Instead of just giving a warning, cruise lines are increasingly flagging accounts that show suspicious patterns. That can lead to restrictions on your package, extra charges, or even having the package revoked entirely without a refund. So, what used to be a small, overlooked behavior is now being treated much more seriously. The reality is, cruise lines are using better tracking systems to monitor purchases and usage in real time. And once something gets flagged, it's much harder to argue your case on board. The smarter move? Use your package exactly as intended, one person, one drink at a time. It might not feel like a big deal, but the consequences now are much bigger than most passengers expect. And if you think that's strict, wait until you see how quickly other onboard issues can escalate. 3. Noise complaints can escalate fast. One complaint used to be a warning, not anymore. Cruises are meant to be fun, social, and relaxing, but not everyone has the same idea of what that looks like. And in 2026, cruise lines are stepping in faster when things get too loud or disruptive. What people think is, it's a vacation, a little noise isn't a big deal. But for nearby passengers trying to rest, it can quickly turn into a problem. In the past, a noise complaint might result in a simple warning, maybe a quick call from guest services asking you to keep it down. But now, enforcement is moving much faster. Cruise lines are responding more seriously to complaints, especially repeated ones. That means less patience for ongoing disturbances and quicker escalation if the behavior continues. And here's where it becomes a real issue. If complaints pile up, the consequences can go beyond just a warning. Restrictions can be placed on your activities, and in more serious cases, passengers can even be removed from the ship at the next port. It doesn't take much. Late-night gatherings, loud music, or even just consistent noise in your cabin can trigger complaints. The reality is, cruise lines are prioritizing the overall experience for all passengers, and that means taking disruptions more seriously than before. The smarter move? Be aware of your surroundings. Keep noise levels reasonable, especially at night, and respect shared spaces. Because what feels like harmless fun to you could quickly turn into a situation that affects your entire trip. 2. Automatic charges are increasing and harder to remove. This one hits your wallet directly. Cruises are often marketed as all-inclusive, but many passengers quickly realize there are additional charges that add up along the way. And in 2026, those charges are becoming both higher and harder to avoid. What people think is, I'll just adjust or remove anything I don't agree with on board. But that flexibility is starting to disappear. Gratuities, in particular, have been increasing across many cruise lines. These daily service charges are automatically added to your account, covering staff and onboard services. And while they've always been there, the key change now is how they're handled. It's becoming more difficult to modify or remove them once you're on board. What used to be a simple request at guest services is now often met with stricter policies and less room for adjustment. And it's not just gratuities. Other automatic charges like service fees or add-ons are also being applied more consistently, leaving passengers with fewer options to opt out. The result? A higher final bill than many people expect. The smarter move is to plan for these costs ahead of time. Factor them into your budget so there are no surprises at the end of your trip. Because in 2026, it's not just about what you spend, it's about what you can no longer avoid. 1. The new zero-tolerance enforcement trend. This is the biggest change in 2026, and almost no one is talking about it. All of these rules point to one larger shift happening across the cruise industry. It's not just that policies are changing, it's how they're being enforced. What people think is, if I make a small mistake, I'll just get a warning. But that assumption is becoming less reliable. Cruise lines are moving toward a more strict zero-tolerance approach. That means fewer second chances, faster responses, and less flexibility when rules are broken. Something that might have been overlooked in the past is now more likely to be flagged immediately. Whether it's a restricted item, a policy violation, or onboard behavior, enforcement is happening quicker and with more serious consequences. And this shift is happening across the board. It's not limited to one rule or one situation. It's a broader trend that affects everything from boarding procedures to onboard conduct. So instead of gradual warnings or multiple chances, passengers are seeing faster penalties and more decisive action. That's why so many people are getting caught off guard. They're expecting the same relaxed approach from previous cruises, but the reality has changed. The smarter move is to assume that every rule matters, no matter how small it seems. Because in this new environment, even minor mistakes can escalate quickly. It's not just about what changed, it's how seriously they're enforcing it now. Be honest, would you risk bringing something if it might get taken at security, or do you play it safe? Let me know what you'd do. And if you want to stay ahead of these changes and avoid costly mistakes on your next cruise, make sure you subscribe because these rules are evolving faster than most people realize. Cruise rules aren't just changing, they're getting stricter every year. And the biggest mistake passengers make? Assuming things are the same as last time.